that knows the NFL inside and out. He's been a consultant. I think he's been a manager. He's obviously known for being one of the greatest head coaches in the history of the game. Ladies and gentlemen, of New York Giants fame, Coach Tom Coughlin.
Yeah, go!
Thank you, Pat.
How you doing, Coach?
Thank you, Pat. I thought you were telling stories about stadiums. I could tell you one about the old Raiders Stadium. We're going to open with them one year when I was in Jacksonville. We go out there. None of the restrooms worked. Yes. And after the game, we all showered in one stream of water coming out of the wall. The whole team, and then flew back across the country.
What year is that, Coach? Coach, what year is that, you think?
I don't know, maybe 96 or 7, right in there.
Okay, yeah. So let's talk about that, because Candlestick, obviously back in San Francisco, had no doors on the toilets that like back in the day. Obviously, the Coliseum you're talking about in Oakland was wild behind the scenes, but then you get out there and everybody in the city is smoking too, so it's just a weed cloud over the entire place. And if you look at what it is now, Allegiant Stadium, they're selling like $100,000 VIP boxes right off of the end zone. Is it wild for you and the other OGs that have helped build this league to see where it is now? I mean, there'll be hundreds of thousands of people in Green Bay just to watch the draft. Feels like the league is bigger and better than ever. Could you guys have expected that whenever you guys were trying to build this entire thing?
Well, that's for sure. But some of these stadiums today are just they're incredible. You know, they're going to build one here in Jacksonville in the next couple of years. It looks more like a spaceship. It's unbelievable where these things are going and how well they've come along. But I will tell you this: I was in Green Bay for 2 years, and the fans are incredible, as you well know. During my first preseason, I had come in from St. Norbert's College to our offices to look at some tape real quick before a night preseason game. I thought I'd maybe run home for a couple of hours before the game started, about 3:30. I opened the back door of the office, the way we used to sneak out in the parking lot, and the parking lot was full of people for a preseason game that was at 7:30 or 8 o'clock at night. They're throwing frisbees. They're throwing the football around. It was an incredible scene. That was my first introduction to the fans of Green Bay.
One of the greatest football towns in the history of football towns. Anytime you think of Green Bay, you think of football, you think of Steve Sable, you think of NFL films, you think of the frozen tundra, you think of the backbone of what the NFL has become.
Think of Lombardi. Oh. That's what you think about. Lombardi Avenue, right there, you know.
Right next to McCarthy Way, and then I think A.J. Hawk even's got a lane over there. They got a good curling facility there. But let's talk about this week of the NFL calendar. Obviously, the draft is on Thursday. As a head coach, as a manager, as a consultant, what are your thoughts on the guys that you're trying to bring into the building? For us, it feels like we just want to know if you love ball. Like if somebody loves ball, everything else kind of follows suit. Was that what you were looking for as well, or what was kind of the big thing?
It's a huge question that the players asked. And you know how this goes now, Pat. The players are given the answers to the questions in advance, you know, by the agents and all that stuff. But you're looking for authenticity. You're looking for somebody who loves the game, who knows what he's getting into, knows what he's being hired for, who fits your tradition in your locker room. Let's face it, if you've been with it for a few years, and you've had a chance to build a team the way you want to build them, you want somebody that's going to come in and be a part of that. So all of those questions are big, and of course goes right along with all the normal questions of height, weight, speed, and blah, 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 who he played against, who's the best guy you competed against this year, you know, as we all try to analyze and work down towards it. But the love of the game and the love of competition, this is the thing that you've got to get to the bottom of. Who are the competitors? Give me a room full of competitors, and we'll take our chance.
Go ahead, AJ.
Coach, other than watching these guys on film, watching them compete and speaking to their coaches, I guess what can you do to ensure that this guy is a true competitor and he's not, you know, putting on just because he's sitting in a 15-minute meeting with your team at the combine?
Well, for me, you got to count on your scouts. You've got to count on the people that are supposed to be doing all the background work, doing all the checking, knowing the personality of the player. It's not easy today. I understand that. The trainers don't really give you the information you need today because of all the legalities that are involved. But however, you got to have people who truly know the player and can stand up one way or another and talk about him. We're going to know how the player grades on the tape. We're going to know a little bit about him after his interview at the combine. But what you need to know is deep down inside, what's he made up of? And somebody's got to get in there and find out the real personality of the individual.
On the things that you potentially find out, D-Bud has a question for you.
Yeah, during this process, I feel like every year it's always a prospect that's like, hey, it's some red flags, off the field. As a coach, before drafting a guy, how was the due diligence behind that? But then is there a certain story where maybe you did some due diligence on the guy, you trusted him going forward, and it turned out to be good?
Well, my story with regard to that is not the story of a prospect coming in. It's a story of David Tyree. David Tyree and this is, I'm not talking out of school. David wrote it in his book. David Tyree, my first year, it's the spring of 2004, my first year in New York. I look up from my desk and there's a knock on the door. Ernie Accorsi's there. He's got David Tyree with him. And he brings David Tyree in and he looks at me and he says, do with him what you want. I thought, oh, what's coming? So David sat down, Syracuse guy. He sat down and he told me the story. He had been pulled over by a police officer on one of the bridges and he had marijuana in his trunk. And so I listened to the story and David told me about finding Jesus and all that. And I've heard that one before. So that wasn't necessarily the clincher. But I did listen intently and I did decide that, you know what, I'm going to give this guy another chance. And he proved to be quite a story, and it was a good thing we kept him.
Yeah, I'd say. I think Eli's pretty pumped up about it as well. I don't know how Patriots fans feel. As soon as you mentioned his name, Boston Connor over here sent two birds to the sky. Yeah. And I'm happy.
You know, Pat, one of the stories about David Tyree and Eli tells you a little bit about Eli. The Friday before that Super Bowl 42, the Patriots undefeated team, we're practicing. We had the Arizona Cardinal facility to practice in. So we're practicing, and it's probably the worst practice I've ever seen certainly a receiver have. David Tyree was a wide receiver. We used him on short yardage and goal line because he's strong and he would block. And we had put some things in the goal line where the fake, the first touchdown he scored in the game was off of that play action play. But in the practice, he couldn't catch a thing. The ball was hitting him in the helmet, shoulder pads. He couldn't follow it in. It was a really terrible practice. Now I'm trying to hold it all together, not show my concern, blah, 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 blah. The red line's going up my head a little bit. But Eli, when the practice is over, he takes David Tyree, he puts his arm around him, and he says, David, don't worry about today. We know that when the game's on the line, you'll come through for us. It was quite a prophecy, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I'd say. Tell me about Eli, because obviously we know Eli from the Manning cast, and he's one trying to keep things light.
That's right.
And I've got a chance to be around him. He's much taller and bigger than I think people give him credit for. He's incredibly athletic. I think his brother's known as like the robot, obviously, the type A personality. We're going to do this all. What was Eli like? Is that a very common Eli story there of leadership and teammate and everything like that?
It is in his own way. My thinking is this, Pat. Quarterbacks are busy. They're real busy guys. They got a lot on their plate. They're not going to be your rah-rah guys. They can be your captain where they stand there at midfield, but they're not going to be the guy that stands in the huddle and gets people going, et cetera. They've got to be really into the game mentally, and that's where they're coming from. But the thing that a lot of people don't know about Eli is, he can dish it out, and he can take it. But he's one of the great, ball busters in the locker room you've ever been around.
Hell yeah.
And so you had Richie Soybert, you had O'Hara, you had Strahan, and you had Eli, and back and forth they would be. And but he can dish it out, he can take it, and he's really, really good for a football team in that sense.
Yeah, it sounds like you guys had a great culture over there. Let's talk about the Giants' culture currently. Tone has a question for you.
Yeah, Coach, there's a lot of talk around this draft about the Giants at number 3, and they have to take a player that, will quote-unquote save Brian Daboll and Joe Shane's job. How do you feel about that going into a draft with that much pressure, on the coaching staff, on the team, and it just in general, trying to save your team and save your job with a draft?
Well, I'll be honest with you. The noise on the outside that's what it is. It's noise on the outside. The coaches, the scouts, the GM, they know what's on the line, okay? The way the Giants have always operated is best player available. And the thing that has to happen in a draft anytime is you can't reach for somebody. You can't reach for a player who does not belong in that position. So if he's graded into that position and that player happens to be there, then the Giants are going to take best available.
How do you feel? Did you watch the offseason, the Hard Knocks offseason last year?
No.
Oh,
I never watched any of that stuff.
Smart.
it's a good idea not to watch any of that stuff. I'll tell you what, the offseason one, though, last year was just like a recipe for disaster, I think, if you're Shane in the Giants. But as a fan, getting an inside look into how that all – because, like, the Saquon decision had to be made. And then Daniel Jones' decision was already made. So it's like we have to stay with what we made. We can't really do this. And then Saquon has the biggest year a running back has ever had in the history. It's like each year you can potentially get burned. Is that kind of the idea, the mindset that you have as a coach or GM? Like, hey, we got one-day contracts here?
Well, not really. The consequences, as you've already mentioned, are great. But you have to understand that in my belief, and I'm a fan just like you. I'm not in any office meetings where I listen to what their questions are or how they want to go about their business. That's their business. But I do know this: there's always a give and take, and something happened in that negotiation that went south, and obviously the result is the result. And to Saquon and the Eagles' benefit. It worked out terrifically for them, and unfortunately for the Giants, it didn't. So the Giants, they understand it. They've listened to all that's been said about it, but they've got to go about their business now. The great thing that's going on in Philadelphia, which once we start talking about football again, is the idea that look what the running game did for the Philadelphia Eagles, and better than that. The greatest asset that a quarterback can have, bring Jalen Hurts in, and we'll talk about it, is the ability to run the ball. Because when you run the ball, you have play action pass. You help the offensive line. You help everybody. And then in a game when they're going to launch the ball, you saw that result as well. It's unexpected on the part of the secondary in many situations. But the running game and what Philadelphia had found, and it also kept the quarterback from being the primary runner in that offense, which is going to keep him on 2 feet for a lot longer.
Coach, what do you think Saquon has done for the rest of the league? We know we saw the running back position kind of get devalued. I feel like now it's back on the map. I feel like old school football, it's cyclical. It's all coming back. Do you see this teams trying to become run heavy now in the future?
Well, I never believed in any of that crap either. Derrick Henry did a pretty good job for Baltimore too. So you got people who have reestablished themselves in the positions they should be in. Those people that have that kind of ability and can literally put a team on their back, they're going to be taken high in the draft. I think that part of it has been proven to be a mistake when you pass up on the great ones.
How do you feel about football, though, as a whole? You said you didn't buy into all of that. It got really spread out. Rules changed. Safeties and linebackers weren't able to really hit over the middle. The tight end position became this blossoming position. We started spinning it 50, 60 times a game. All of a sudden, the running back, you better learn how to protect more so than run the ball. Now Saquon and the Philadelphia Eagles almost give everybody else a blueprint, like in 2025, you're allowed to be a run-dominant team again. Do you think that's true or no?
Don't forget now, okay? Once you've got the quarterback, you're talking to me, so this is what I believe. Once you've got the quarterback, and that's over here, you can't win without the quarterback, okay? I think we all agree with that. Now I'm going to work on the offense and defensive lines. That's what you're seeing in Philadelphia. To get done what they did with a 4-man rush and play coverage behind that? Are you serious? I mean, you'd love to be able to stamp that for every game you play in. And that's what they were able to do.
How come everybody's not doing that?
Good question.
All right, there's a couple more questions for you, Coach. Here's Ty Schmidt.
Yeah, Coach, going back to the culture question with yours specifically, everyone's heard of Coughlin time and kind of heard stories about the way you run your operation. We've been talking a lot with these kids in college now with NIL, who they're coming into the NFL and they're already millionaires. They've, kind of been not necessarily entitled, but pampered for a long time. Do you think it's harder for younger kids to acclimate to being in the NFL now than it was when you were coaching and actually taking it as a profession and realizing how serious everything goes?
That's a good question, and I'll tell you why. Remember, in days gone by, the ultimate was professional football. To be in a position to be drafted, or in the case of many, it would be as a free agent, make a professional football team and have that as your goal, but to know how to get to that goal by going to a college where you've got 4 years, you've got to battle adversity, you've got to fight yourself through some difficult times. Other coach doesn't like me. I'll tell you what, play well, the coach will like you a lot. These ideas today about, the worst thing that ever happened in the collegiate game is this business about, the portal and transferring and all that crap. What are we teaching our young people? Every time you don't like something, you run away from it? What is that all about?
Yeah.
What does that have to do with education? How about the understanding you're going to need your degree? I don't care if it's 10 years down the road or whatever. You're going to need to be in some circumstances where you had to use brain power to get to the next level. I think we've made some huge mistakes. They talk about the genie doesn't go back in the bottle. Let me tell you guys, if we don't solve this portal business, this transfer stuff, so that people, the tradition of college football again, the love of the game, the idea that when you make that decision, you're there for a 4-year period, or there's a penalty. You want to go? Yeah, go ahead and go. But you're going to have to sit out for a year, and the clock is going to be running on you. So I am upset about all of these things. And matter of fact, I told Nick Saban and Archie Manning, those two need to get together and solve college football somehow.
Agreed. I've been telling Nick Saban that since the first day I talked to him. Like, hey, buddy, you're the one that's got to do this because all the coaches respect him. Mm-hmm. Like, I think he's one of the only ones that can rally all the coaches, because if not, you and I both know this, there'll be all the coaches saying, yeah, this shouldn't happen. And then also, hey, we got $100,000 over here if you want to just go ahead and bail because we're going to try to win. It's like they need rules. They need something. And for everything you're talking about, I think is obviously very valid. But the ripple effect long term of never facing adversity or being calloused is a big deal. There's no question about it. I don't want to speak out of pocket.
It makes you stronger.
Bingo.
It makes you better. It makes you better.
I was just kicker and punter, okay? And so I don't want to speak out of pocket for everybody. Every human I know that played college football wanted to quit at least 5 times.
Winter workouts,
off-season workouts, summer workouts.
6 o'clock in the morning.
Everybody.
You can't go home. You can't go home. You got to stay there for the whole summer.
Yes.
All of that stuff.
A lot of moments of like, nope, not doing this anymore. And now there's like an opportunity like, oh, you don't want to do it? That's smart, actually. And also, we can get you an extra couple $100,000 over there. It's like any 19-year-old, 18-year-old that just has like, comes from a background of nothing, like it's almost a desirable move to do that when really fighting through that entire feeling is going to help you for the rest of your life. Hopefully, we'll be able to get that. We are wrapping up here on ESPN. We will continue digitally on ESPN Plus, Disney Plus, YouTube, and TikTok Live. You see on his polo there, J Fund. It has raised over $32 million for families battling against pediatric cancer. You can help out Coach Coughlin. We will continue.
30 years, Pat. 30 years we've been doing this.
Incredible work. I was just reading about this. Founded in 1996 by Tom Coughlin in honor of Jay McGillis, who developed leukemia while a member of Coach Coughlin's team at Boston College. They've been doing this for 30 years, the foundation. They provide financial and emotional support to the families of pediatric cancer, I believe, because the parents and everybody has to like shut down their lives basically to make sure the kid can get through all the treatments and get to all the things. Over $32 million in assistance in the J Fund. Congrats, Coach. That's amazing stuff. That's making the world a better place, Coach. That's a real deal.
Hey, Pat, thank you for what you do for charity too. You've raised a lot of money.
Well,
hell yeah.
Listen, it's try to make the world a better place, try to chase fulfillment, but whenever you're in a position like you, especially with how much focus you had to have on football, to go ahead and change a terrible situation, I assume, for your team and try to make it a little bit positive for families is a beautiful thing. That's a J Fund. We will help out however we can. Our goal is to be there for parents facing the unthinkable so they can be there for their families. What a mission. Legitimately, what a mission. Coach Coughlin, everything we've heard about you is just like first class, first class. With that being said, you go to a media market, obviously you're in Jacksonville and you've been in a couple other places, but in New York, that media market is a place that they are trying to make you not be that. Go ahead, con man.
Yeah, Coach, how is the New York media market? Because every year, it feels like there's a conversation. When Aaron Rodgers went to the Jets, the whole entire thing was, well, is he going to be able to handle the New York media market? It's pretty intense over there. And he kind of made the point basically saying, well, now everything's on the internet. Like, it's not as if you're not dealing with, a massive media market no matter where you are if you're playing for an NFL team, let alone an NFL team who's competing for a Super Bowl. But is that a real thing that you have to prepare guys for if they are coming in as rookies or they're coming in as free agents when you were with the Giants? Like, hey, this is different here now? Or is that kind of more more of a myth than it is a real thing that you guys have to deal with?
It's real. And I'll tell you, I'll give you the best example. When you speak in some markets to the media on a daily basis, there's 6 or 8 people. When you speak to the media in New York on a daily basis, there might be 75 to 100. Okay? It's a whole different deal. And realize this, these guys, these people, okay, are competing for a story, for something sensational, something that makes their presentation, their article, different from other people's article. And that's what it is. It's a highly competitive thing. I think we all go through it. I had to learn from it. You guys know what happened after the 06 season. Hell, they wanted to fire me. We're 8-8. We're in the playoffs. Get rid of Coughlin. But I did come to an understanding. I'm a blue-collar guy. The media people the writers are blue-collar guys. I sat and talked to them face-to-face, took the gloves off. We came away with, I had a little bit more respect for them. And I could treat them a little bit better. I could give them a little information, never would hurt my team, but I could be a little bit more approachable. They needed help for their job. And I changed a little bit, and I was better with regard to that. But it is highly, highly competitive in that market. And you do have to have as a part of your player development program, the educational value of understanding how to deal with the press.
Yeah, the press is obviously a very important piece of the NFL. Media and coverage of the NFL is a massive piece of it all. I had no idea that New York media members were blue collar. I had no idea. Until you just said it right there. I almost puked, actually, whenever you said it, but you would know a lot better than I would, I guess. You actually had a chance with them. Extend the olive branch. Let's go shake their hands. Let's move forward. We got to work together. I think that's a smart play. Once again, Coach Coughlin, figuring it out. I mean, that seems to be what you do in all aspects. Go ahead, AJ.
Coach, getting back to the draft, Travis Hunter, what do you make of this guy? What do you think he's going to be able to do next at the next level? Would you be able to play him both ways, receiver and DB, or what do you think your plan would be if you drafted him and brought him in?
He's obviously a very, very highly skilled and very, very well-conditioned athlete. To be able to do that at the college level in a game that has, 150 plays or more? So this is a young man who's expressed an interest in that. I've never met him. I've never talked to him. I have never had the privilege of sitting down and learning more about him, but it appears on tape that he's an exceptional athlete. And if that's the case, I don't know why, whichever side you decide to put him on, you wouldn't have a special situation, your dime look, whatever, where that young man might play on the defensive side of the ball as well as offense.
Coach, it's never happened really before. Obviously, there's always been packages for incredible athletes through it all. And there's now people saying, you have to play him. And I think he has publicly come out and said that he wants to play both, but then he also gave a full answer because that's what he's always done. Do we have, is there guys that are going to have success in the NFL? Like Travis Hunter's going to have success in the NFL in my eyes. But this draft, there are so many, I'm not saying Travis Hunter, this is not me saying this about Travis Hunter, okay? The cart before horse, though, happens with the draft every single year, media-wise. And the numbers say, and this, once again, not about Travis Hunter, numbers say a lot of these guys aren't going to fare in the NFL. How do you keep a realistic view whenever you're going into a draft or even into the rebuilding of your team, understanding that some guys just aren't going to be able to be good NFL players?
Well, you've made those decisions going in, and there are some people that only put the guys they believe can really play on the board. If there's any question about them, they're not even up there. So you might have a board that's stocked for all 7 rounds, or you might have a board that has 40 or 50 players on there because those are the people that they believe can play the best. The thing that you'll have to keep in mind about Travis is, and all players, okay, 17 games is a grind. I will just tell you that. It's a grind. And to be able to I know he's young, but to be able to get that production, a player has to be well rested, well trained, well conditioned, and you've got to be able to say, like we all do, during the course of the season, maybe we do a walkthrough on Wednesday instead of a full practice as the season goes on. Because here's a guy, if he is doing what we're talking about, playing on both sides of the ball, he's liable to have 75, 80 plays a game. And you're going to have to keep track of all that.
I hope he's able to do it because it would be spectacular. And watching him in Colorado was awesome as well. And I hope it happens. But you got to remember, the NFL is the all-star team of every single generation that has played for the last, 20 years, basically, with how guys are. It's a different level every single week. If Travis is able to just make the jump for what he was doing in Colorado right in the NFL, got to be celebrated as one of the greatest athletes to ever exist. Let's talk about the modern NFL a little bit more. D-Bud has a question for you.
Yeah, we kind of talked about earlier with the running game kind of coming back. I know something that's come back as well is more too high safeties, more defenses kind of making the offenses and the quarterbacks go the long, hard way. Do you kind of see that sticking around, or do you see it going back to more single high safety here pretty soon?
You know why that is?
Why?
Because people are not patient enough to run the ball.
Oh, yeah.
They give up on the run. If you can sit there, okay, with 6 in the box and stop the run, you got a pretty darn good football team. But most people on the offensive side of the ball will not stay with the run. You're sitting there with 2 high. You know what you're running against, no matter how they configure it. No matter what personnel you have in the game.
Yep.
You know what you're going against. And you can scheme to block it up. But people won't stay with it. They won't stay with it. And that's where the game has changed.
What do you think we should talk about first round of the draft on Thursday night? What is a point we should make more of? Like, is this team trying to get better, or are they trying to find starters? Like, first round, we're trying to find starters, or we're just trying to find guys that contribute? How many, back half of the draft, is anybody realistically thinking that they're definitely going to hit a home run? What are some things we should think about Thursday night from the great brain of Coach Coughlin, you think?
One thing you should do is make a decision in your minds as you're looking at it and studying it. What is the first round? Are there actually 25 guys that belong there? Are there 20 players that belong there? What's the first round according to the way in which you evaluate, okay? Then you can look at the individual teams. Okay, what's Kansas City doing? They're trying to solidify an area which has become quite obvious for you, okay? And that is, at some point in time, they're definitely going to try to get better in the offensive line for sure. So you need to understand where a team is, what they're in need of, and then you have to make those decisions going in also as you look at the players available. Okay, are they available by need, or is this the best player out there at that time? So you've got a lot to talk about as each individual team comes up. What are their needs? Where was their weakness? What do they intend to do? What did they do in the offseason? You got to know what people did in free agency, because if you're not putting that thing together that way, you got a lot of problems.
What do? You golf these days? You said you're down in Jacksonville. What is life like for Coach Coughlin right now?
Well, I'm busy with my foundation. The J Fund Foundation has our 30th Celebrity Golf Classic, May 18 and 19. At TPC Sawgrass, the Players Championship.
Oh.
Yeah. So that's our 30th. We had a wine tasting back in March. that had 1,200 people at it. We have a Champions for Children dinner in New York in October that the Giants have been extremely supportive of, just as the Jaguars are supporting us here in Jacksonville. So we're busy with these things. The only thing I admit to in golf is I have clubs. Okay? That's it. All right. I play 9 holes a week with Randy Edsel and Mike Malarkey. Two names you all know in football. Yeah.
Dog.
So that's my golf.
UConn legend Randy Edsel.
Hell yeah.
Let him know the West Virginia Mountaineers say hello.